Today, I'm going to show you P6-Scrubber from Emerald Associates. This is a tool that will help you to import cleaner schedules so as not to pollute and add additional unwanted data into your schedule or into your Primavera database. As owners of Primavera databases, it is important that we have particular data that is specific to our business. And we don't always want to import a schedule that has a bunch of extra data from another company. When a schedule is imported with that data, essentially we're polluting our own databases with unnecessary information. In the case of getting imports from or files from subcontractors, say schedules, you may have specific requirements that you have for those subs to provide on their schedules. And you need an easy way to be able to identify that those requirements have been met. We find many companies spend a large amount of time trying to get that data they need into their Primavera environments without bringing all the stuff they don't want into their own. So this is a common struggle for many companies. In fact, any company who does import schedules from outside sources into their databases. Some companies use scrubbing databases to import the schedules into. They clean out all that unnecessary information from the schedule, and then when it's clean, they export that clean schedule out and then import it into their production databases. This takes a whole lot of time to do this. So having a tool such as P6-Scrubber to do this for you will actually save you that cumbersome process, as well as cut down on the time you're spending manually cleaning those XERs and XMLs. Your database will remain much cleaner using P6-Scrubber. Each company can configure their own settings on how to deal with each piece of information. Of course, you can decide whether you want to keep it, whether you want it flagged, whether you want it altogether just deleted. When I was a system administrator for a DOT, they had been importing XERs without scrubbing them or removing any of the additional data from other companies. This resulted in over 200 global calendars in this database, when really they only used 3 for their own schedules. Long story short, I had to clean all of those calendars and other codes, and it really came in with all those XERs. And it was just a huge undertaking. If they had cleaned those and made those have less information in them that was unneeded, it would have been a whole lot easier to keep that system clean. Also at DOT, we required our contractors to provide some mandatory specifications when they submitted their schedules. The only ways that we were able to check those were by importing that into our database and actually checking to see if they were there. We would have to, sort and things like that to make sure that those values that they used, if they did have those mandatory specifications in, were the values that were there valid. So again, with something like P6-Scrubber, we could have run that through the scrubber and it would have told us exactly what they had included and if all those values in that were in the dictionary that were required. You can configure P6-Scrubber to handle each piece of data in the manner that you want it handled. So this is a huge benefit. You can do exactly what you want with these files that you're scrubbing. You set it up, you determine what you want to. One company's requirements are different from another. So it's really important that you don't just have this vanilla tool out there that's going to handle everything the same. You have to be able to configure that. So you'll be able to check all those mandatory specifications that you need to have followed, and it will also save you a ton of time scrubbing and taking out those unnecessary codes and UDFs and calendars. It's very simple to use. P6-Scrubber is just basically moving it into a file. Once you have all the settings done, you move it into a file folder in a directory, and P6-Scrubber picks it up, scrubs it, and tells you whether it was successful or unsuccessful. And I'll touch on that and actually show you how that works in just a moment. So when you are using P6-Scrubber, you can check to see if your files or your schedules are adhering to the rules of your database before importing a file. So there's no need to import it into that scrubbing database first. You'll also be able to select exactly what is scrubbed and what is checked and how you want to handle it if it does not meet criteria. So a few years back, of course, we had our POBS issue that was running rampant and being transferred with those P6 files, those XCRs. So that's kind of tamed down a little bit now, but in most recent years, we've found that we have a risk type issue. We have people who are importing files from outside sources that have huge risk type files containing tens of thousands of values, and they're just not good, of course, to bring into your database. So P6-Scrubber automatically will take those two items out if they find it in your XCR or your XML. For calendars, we can decide whether we want to roll those calendars down to the project calendars. In most cases, this is what you want to do. You want to maintain that calendar with that schedule, but you don't want to pollute up your global calendars. So it will roll down the calendars and maintain it at the project level, as well as reassigning all those into your activities at the project level. It can check UDFs, validate what are required at all levels. It can remove the disallowed UDFs, as well as all the codes. Can validate not only the code type and that the code is there, but also if the value that is included in that code type is valid. It will remove disallowed codes, as well as check your cost code validation and validate those values that are used in cost codes and remove those also. You can validate your project ID structures by setting up specific rules. If you have certain ways that you need to see that information, you have project name structure value rules. These can all be checked with P6 Loader or P6-Scrubber. So let's just take a look at how each one of these, or how this works. You can remove all the UDF types from any subject area, as long as you define it within that configuration. The calendar roll down, again, you can roll that down. You can roll it down to the project level and replace the activities with the project calendar, as well as replacing the default calendar in the project to be the project calendar. And then finally, that global calendar will be removed from the file. So it's going to maintain all the information of that global calendar, except for now it's going to reside at the project level. For code validation, you can check to see if a required code is missing. If that required code is there, is the value in that dictionary? Are you going to allow all the values, or are there going to be illegal values? So the ones that aren't actually in that list, in that dictionary, are you going to, it can remove those for you. And or you can decide, okay, maybe I need a new code or a new value, and that value can be added into your dictionary. So essentially, the steps to run P6-Scrubber are you get your exported file and you put it into an input folder. The scrubber runs on that file, and it either puts it into a success folder if everything has been looked at and is able to resolve it. And then it's going to not only put it into the success folder, it's going to give you a report telling you what it actually happened and what Scrubber did with that particular file. We also have an error folder. If it cannot run, P6-Scrubber cannot run on that particular file, it will put it into the error folder. In that case, you're probably just going to want to send that schedule back to wherever it came from and have them fix it. If it is successful and you are okay with importing that file, it's been cleaned and everything is removed that needs to be, and all the validations are okay, you can go ahead and import that file into your database. So let's just let me just show you how this would work. Now, right now I am wearing the hat of a subcontractor, let's say, and I need to send this particular schedule to a DOT. I have some mandatory things that I need, and I have some things that I actually use in my own database. So I've got a district project code, as well as a QA project code, and a notes UDF. Now, the way that I have my scrubber configured right now, I'm going to check all these things. So I have a district project code, and that is a code that is valid at the DOT. So it's going to check if what I have as a value, assigned as a value at with that project code, if it is actually included in the valid values for that district. Also, I've got this project code QA yes no, which is not part of what DOT wants to see, as well as all these other ones. Now these, the reason I have these is because I use P6QA on it to validate and check the schedule quality of my schedule for myself. And I run this tool, which is a tool that Emerald Associates has. I run this to make sure that everything looks good on my schedule quality for my business. But it does create and does have UDFs assigned. Now, if I go over into my activities, I have a few more things that I have assigned in this file. I have a discipline, I have a task order, I have a phase, a change order, as well as a station location. Well, these are not values that the DOT has required. However, they have required that I have a responsibility activity code as well as a work type activity code. So those are starred to let me know that these are specifications that I have to meet for this particular schedule. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to export this and get ready to send it to the DOT. So I'm going to export. And let me put this into a different place. I'm going to put it here and then go ahead and export it. Small file, so it went very quickly. Now I'm going to go back into, or I'm going to go into my File Explorer. And I'm already at the place where I saved my XCR to, and now I'm changing hats. I am now the DOT, and I've received this XCR from my subcontractor. Now, before I import this, I want to run this through the scrubber and have the scrubber take a look at all the things that I have configured. So what I do is I move this file, this XCR, into the input file. And while it's in the input file, P6-Scrubber will periodically check to see if there is a new XER in this particular folder. When it finds one, it's going to go out and it's going to run that scrubber on that particular file. So when it's done, it's going to be moved to either a success or a failure file folder in my directory. So when it is done, it's going to, number one, rename my file so that I know that it's been through the scrubber. I'm going to be provided an HTML file report that has told me, or this is going to tell me what P6-Scrubber found in that particular run of that file. I can also set up an optional email message to be sent to me when it is complete, when the scrubber is complete. I can set it up to email me and tell me it's complete, it was successful, or it's failed. It will also provide that report in that email. Now, when I import this file, the new scrubbed file, I'm also going to get a new notebook topic that's going to have, again, the report file on it so that I know that this particular schedule was run through our scrubber and what was actually taken out and what was done with that file. So it's going to maintain what it's done all the way through the process. So I'm back at my File Explorer and I can see that I no longer have a file in my input. So I'm going to go back to where my error and my success folders are. Let's look in the error and oh, thank goodness, I don't have any errors, so it must be in the success folder. So I'll open up the success folder and we can see where I have a date that's been put onto my scrubber file, my XER, as well as the same name on my report. Now I can double click this report and open it up and it's going to tell me exactly what P6-Scrubber did. The top part is just a summary of all the checks that I have out there that I have configured for my scrubber. As I scroll down, I can see a little bit more detailed information about each check. So I can see I've got my calendar roll down. So I had 2 calendars that were global calendars, and they have been turned into project calendars. They've been rolled down to project calendars, and it's actually telling me that on my 5-day work calendar, I had 213 activities across one project that were reassigned with that project calendar. And then I have 10 activities that were reassigned with that project calendar in that project also. It also checked my project ID structure. Now I can see that in my format, it says I should have building in my project ID. Well, I don't have that, so it's been flagged as a fail. It says you need to look at this. This ID does not comply. As I scroll down, I can also check my project name structure. It's telling me that it was successful. I required that building be in my name somewhere, and so I now have building. These can get a lot more granular. Also, this is just a very high level check on this one just to show you how it works. Now I have my UDFs. Now the UDFs, you can see it'll tell me what subject area that I had that UDF was found in, and I had 4 mandatory ones. Well, this file was missing 3 of them, and so it failed that check. However, I did have that notes UDF at the project level that was required, and it was indeed text, and it passed. Now it's saying that all of these passed because there wasn't a reason for them not to pass. It doesn't know what should be in there, but they were not mandatory. You can see that these are all no's. They're not mandatory. So I told in my configuration that I would remove these. So those have all been removed, all those P6QA UDFs that I had on my file. Then I get down to my project code types and my dictionary validation. So I have my client type that was not mandatory. It just didn't do anything with it. Now I do have a district, and I have some values that I'm expecting to see in that district code. But I can see down here that up here first where it's red, that it failed. And down below, it's telling me that this was the value that was in it, and these are the values that it should have had. And so it said, no, we aren't going to do that. It's also telling me that this project code, QA yes, no, is extra, and I want to remove it. So I'm going to have that removed. I can also do that activity code type validation as well as the dictionary validation. And I have my 2 mandatory codes here that have been checked, and you can see that they are indeed mandatory. I had my work type that is actually did not fail on either respect, on either the code missing or the dictionary not including the value, but I did have that fail on my responsibility. The rest of these codes have been removed because they're not codes that I want in my database. Now, and I have some additional information about my activity code dictionary. So I can see that I had the first line tells me the valid values that I had, the values that were actually in my list, and these are the values that are included in that list. And I've also got these values that were not in that list. So I'm going to get 2 separate lists on that when I have valid and invalid. The valid will be first, the invalid will be second. And then I've got my activity code dictionary that all checked out. I also have the ability to do resource codes and dictionary validation there, but I don't have any of that set up. So of course it was successful. I also can do some cost account validation, but I didn't have any cost accounts in my file. But it's going to say everything was okay because none of these were mandatory. I can see that these have to be the cost accounts, but none of them are mandatory, so I have a pass on that. Now what I can do is decide, all right, I've looked at my report. Do I want to go ahead and import this particular XCR now that it's been scrubbed? Well, I've decided yes, I do want to import that. So I'm going to go into my P6, and this time we're going to just imagine that this is actually a project. This is a different database, and so that you can see how a scrubbed file looks when it comes in. So I'm going to go ahead and import that scrubbed file into my existing database, but we're pretending that this is actually a database that is different than the one I took it out of. I'm going to go and find it in my success here and import it to my scrubber EPS and bring it in. So I'm successful. So let me just change the layout here. So you can see some additional items that came in. So I have my old file underneath, or I have my original file underneath, and I have the file that I just imported above. So you can see that it has removed that district code because it was not valid. It has also removed that project code QA yes no, as well as all those UDFs for the P6 tool. But it's brought in some codes of its own. Now I can see that I've got some P6-Scrubber codes, and it's going to give me some indicators telling me how this particular file or this particular schedule measured up when it was ran through the scrubber, and what did I find. Not only do I have it in the form of indicators that I can display, but I also have that new notebook that was brought in with it that is the same report that we went over in the HTML version, but this is just in a notebook. Now, if I go over into my activities, again, let me change my layout here. I'm going to see that my discipline and my task orders have been, those values didn't come in. And it's telling me that I had illegal code types in this particular file, and they were removed. So I have those red X's saying that they were removed. Now on my mandatory codes, my responsibility, it's giving me a yellow on all the places that I did not have a value assigned for that mandatory code. It's also giving me an X where I had a value that was not valid and where it was removed on which activity, as well as the ones that did have valid values have been retained, and it's getting a green check mark for that. On my work type, if you remember, all of our values were valid, and so I have greens all the way down on that. Now in the way of the calendar, you can see that they're still assigned. However, if I go into my calendars now, let me bring this over. I can see that I now have those global calendars have been pushed down to my project level and also have been reassigned to each activity in my schedule. So really easy to run this once we have all of our checks and validations defined. So return on investment, time. It's going to give you the ability to give feedback to your contractors immediately. You're not going to have to import it, go through all of the different checks and things like that. You're going to be able to say in minutes whether you're going to accept that particular XER, or you're going to send that information that you found in your scrubber back to them and have them correct it. You're not going to have to do all those checks manually. You're not going to have to import them into a scrubber and a scrubber database and go through all of those. You're also going to have whatever checks you need in there. It's configurable. You can do whatever you need to do you can define that within P6-Scrubber so that it is truly built for your needs. And then you're also going to get those flags and the reports about what P6-Scrubber did. And not only is that available outside of importing or outside of your database, it's also going to be included when you import that file in. It's going to maintain that information for you. And really what it's all about is keeping a clean system and providing the accuracy that you need to get that data that you need into your system without polluting all the rest of your database. You can decide which data you want to keep, which you want to remove, and it provides a clean import file for you so that you can load that right in and not have to worry about anything. And then you can avoid, again, importing garbage into your database. So with that is P6 Loader. Emerald can help with just about anything that you need that pertains to Primavera. We are a one-stop shop for all things Primavera. We have tools, either our own add-on tools or again, our Primavera tools. We've got services, implementation, cloud, hosting, as well as training, which is Oracle certified. And we do have additional training also. So if you're interested in P6 Loader or any other offerings we have, feel free to reach out to us either by phone or I have included my contact information here on this slide.